they come.
How the leopard got his spots. In the days when everybody started fair, best beloved, the leopard lived in a place called the High Veld. Remember, it wasn't the low veld, or the bush veld, or the sour veld, but the exclusively bare, hot, shiny high veld, where there was sand and sandy-colored rock, and exclusively tufts of sandy, yellowish grass. The giraffe and the zebra and the eland and the kudu and the hartebeest lived there, and they were exclusively sandy, yellow, brownish all over. But the leopard, he was the exclusivist, sandiest, yellowish, brownest of them all. A grayish, yellowish, catty-shaped kind of beast, and he matched the exclusively yellowish, grayish, brownish color of the high veld to one hair. This was very bad for the giraffe and the zebra and the rest of them, for he would lie down by a exclusively yellowish, grayish, brownish stone or clump of grass, and when the giraffe or the zebra or the eland or the kudu or the bushbuck or the bonty buck came by, he would surprise them out of their jumpsome lives. He would indeed. And also, there was an Ethiopian with bows and arrows, exclusively grayish, brownish, yellowish man he was then, who lived on the high veld with the leopard, and the two used to hunt together, the Ethiopian with his bows and arrows, and the leopard exclusively with his teeth and claws, till the giraffe and the eland and the kudu and the quagga and all the rest of them didn't know which way to jump. Best beloved, they didn't indeed. After a long time, things lived for ever so long in those days. They learned to avoid anything that looked like a leopard or an Ethiopian, and bit by bit, the giraffe began it, because his legs were the longest. They went away from the high veld. They scuttled for days and days and days, till they came to a great forest, exclusively full of trees and bushes and stripy, speckly, patchy, blatchy shadows. And there they hid. And after another long time, what with standing half in the shade and half out of it, and what with the slippery, slidey shadows of the tree falling on them, the giraffe grew blotchy, and the zebra grew stripy, and the eland and the kudu grew darker, with little wavy gray lines on their backs, like bark on a tree trunk. And so, though you could hear them and smell them, you could very seldom see them, and then only when you knew precisely where to look. They had a beautiful time in the exclusively speckly, spickly shadows of the forest, while the leopard and the Ethiopian ran about over the exclusively grayish, yellowish, reddish high veld outside, wondering where all their breakfasts and all their dinners and their teas had gone. At last they were so hungry that they ate rats and beetles and rock rabbits, the leopard and the Ethiopian, and then they had the big tummy ache, both together, and then they met Bavian, the dog-headed, barking baboon, who is quite the wisest animal in all South Africa. Said leopard to Bavian, and it was a very hot day, "Where is all the game gone?" And Bavian winked. He knew. Said the Ethiopian to Bavian, "Can you tell me the present habitat of the aboriginal fauna?" That meant just the same thing, but the Ethiopian always used long words. He was a grown-up. And Bavian winked. He knew. Then Bavian said, "The game has gone into other spots, and my advice to you, leopard, is to go into other spots as soon as you can." And the Ethiopian said, "That is all very fine, but I wish to know whither the aboriginal fauna has migrated." Then said Bavian, "The aboriginal fauna has joined the aboriginal flora because it was high time for a change, and my advice to you, Ethiopian, is to change as soon as you can. That puzzled the leopard and the Ethiopian, but they set off to look for the aboriginal flora, and presently, after ever so many days, they saw a great, high, tall forest full of tree trunks, all exclusively speckled and sprottled and spottled, dotted and splashed and slashed and hatched and cross-hatched with shadows. Say that quickly aloud, and you will see how very shadowy the forest must have been. "What is this?" said the leopard, "that is so exclusively dark and yet so full of little pieces of light?" "I don't know," said the Ethiopian, "but it ought to be the aboriginal flora. I can smell giraffe, I can hear giraffe, but I can't see giraffe." "That's curious," said the leopard. "I suppose it is because we have just come in out of the sunshine. I can smell zebra, and I can hear zebra, but I can't see zebra." "Wait a bit," said the Ethiopian. "It's a long time since we've hunted them. Perhaps we've forgotten what they were like." "Fiddle," said the leopard. "I remember them perfectly on the high veld, especially their marrow bones. Giraffe is about 17 feet high, of a exclusively fulvous golden yellow from head to heel. And zebra is about 4.5 feet high, of exclusively gray fawn color from head to heel." Said the Ethiopian, looking into the speckly, spickly shadows of the aboriginal flora forest. "Then they ought to show up in this dark place, like ripe bananas in a smokehouse." But they didn't. The leopard and the Ethiopian hunted all day, and though they could smell them and hear them, they never saw one of them. "For goodness sake," said the leopard at tea time, "let us wait till it gets dark. This daylight hunting is a perfect scandal." So they waited till dark, and then the leopard heard something breathing sniffily in the starlight that fell all stripy through the branches, and he jumped at the noise. And it smelt like zebra, and it felt like zebra, and when he knocked it down, it kicked like zebra, but he couldn't see it. So he said, "Be quiet, oh, you person without any form. I'm going to sit on your head till morning, because there is something about you that I don't understand." Presently he heard a grunt and a crash and a scramble, and the Ethiopian called out, "I've got a thing that I can't see. It smells like giraffe, and it kicks like giraffe, but it hasn't any form." "Don't you trust it," said the leopard. "Sit on its head till morning, same as me. They haven't any form, any of them." So they sat down on them hard till bright morning time, and then the leopard said, "What have you at your end of the table, brother?" The Ethiopian scratched his head and said, "It ought to be exclusively a rich, fulvous orange tawny from head to heel, and it ought to be giraffe, but it is covered all over with chestnut blotches. What have you at your end of the table, brother?" And the leopard scratched his head and said, "It ought to be exclusively a delicate grayish fawn, and it ought to be zebra, but it is covered all over with black and purple stripes. What in the world have you been doing to yourself, zebra? Don't you know that if you were on the high veld, I could see you 10 miles off? You haven't any form." "Yes," said the zebra, "but this isn't the high veld. Can't you see?" "I can now," said the leopard, "but I couldn't all yesterday. How is it done?" "Let us up," said the zebra, "and we will show you." They let the zebra and the giraffe get up, and the zebra moved away to some little thorn bushes where the sunlight fell all stripy, and the giraffe moved off to some tallish trees where the shadows fell all blotchy. "Now watch," said the zebra and the giraffe. "This is the way it's done. 1, 2, 3. And where's your breakfast?" Leopard stared, and Ethiopian stared. But All they could see were stripy shadows and blotched shadows in the forest, but never a sign of zebra and giraffe. They had just walked off and hidden themselves in the shadowy forest. Hi, hi, said the Ethiopian. That's a trick worth learning. Take a lesson by it, leopard. You'll show up in this dark place like a bar of soap in a coal scuttle. Ho, ho, said the leopard. Would it surprise you very much to know that you show up in this dark place like a mustard plaster on a sack of coals? Well, calling names won't catch dinner, said the Ethiopian. The long and the little of it is that we don't match our backgrounds. I'm going to take Bavian's advice. He told me I ought to change. And as I've nothing to change except my skin, I'm going to change that. What to? Said the leopard, tremendously excited. To a nice working blackish-brownish color with a little purple in it and touches of slaty blue. It will be the very thing for hiding in hollows and behind trees. So he changed his skin then and there, and the leopard was more excited than ever. He had never seen a man change his skin before. But what about me? He said, when the Ethiopian had worked his last little finger into his fine new black skin. You take Bavian's advice too. He told you to go into spots. So I did, said the leopard. I went into other spots as fast as I could. I went into this spot with you, and a lot of good it has done me. Oh, said the Ethiopian. Bavian didn't mean spots in South Africa. He meant spots on your skin. What's the use of that? Said the leopard. Think of the giraffe, said the Ethiopian. Or if you prefer stripes, think of zebra. They find their spots and stripes give them perfect satisfaction. Said the leopard. I wouldn't look like zebra, not forever so. Well, make up your mind, said the Ethiopian, because I'd hate to go hunting without you. But I must if you insist on looking like a sunflower against a tarred fence. I'll take spots then, said the leopard, but don't make 'em too vulgar big. I wouldn't look like giraffe, not forever so. I'll make 'em with the tips of my fingers, said the Ethiopian. There's plenty of black left on my skin still. Stand over. Then the Ethiopian put his 5 fingers close together. There was plenty of black left on his new skin still, and pressed them all over the leopard. And wherever the 5 fingers touched, they left 5 little black marks all close together. You can see them on any leopard skin you like, best beloved. Sometimes the fingers slipped and the marks got a little blurred. But if you look closely at any leopard now, you will see that there are always 5 spots off 5 fat black fingertips. Now you are a beauty, said the Ethiopian. You can lie out on the bare ground and look like a heap of pebbles. You can lie out on the naked rocks and look like a piece of pudding stone. You can lie out on a leafy branch and look like sunshine sifting through the leaves. And you can lie right across the center of a path and look like nothing in particular. Think of that and purr. But if I'm all this, said the leopard, why didn't you go spotty too? Oh, plain black's best for me, said the Ethiopian. Now, come along, and we'll see if we can't get even with Mr. 123, where's your breakfast? So they went away and lived happily ever afterward. Best beloved, that is all. Oh, now, and then you will hear grown-ups say, can the Ethiopian change his skin or the leopard his spots? I don't think even grown-ups would keep on saying such a silly thing if the leopard and the Ethiopian hadn't done it once, do you? But they will never do it again, best beloved. They are quite contented as they are. I am the most wise Bavian, saying in most wise tones, let us melt into the landscape, just us two by our lones. People have come in a carriage calling, but mummy is there. Yes, I can go if you take me. Nurse says she don't care. Let's go up to the pigsties and sit on the farmyard rails. Let's say things to the bunnies and watch 'em skitter their tails. Let's anything, Daddy, so long as it's you and me, and going truly exploring and not being in till tea. Here's your boots, I've brought 'em, and here's your cap and stick, and here's your pipe and tobacco. Oh, come along out of it, quick. That is wise Bavian, the dog-headed baboon, who is quite the wisest animal in all South Africa. They have drawn him from a statue that they made out of their own head. And Kipling has written his name on his belt and on his shoulder and on the thing he is sitting on. He has written it in what is not called Coptic and hieroglyphic and cuneiformic and Bengalic and Burmic and Hebraic, all because he is so wise. He is not beautiful, but he is very wise. And Kipling should like to paint him with paint box colors, but I am not allowed. The umbrella-ish thing about his head is his conventional mane. That is the picture of the leopard and the Ethiopian after they had taken wise Bavian's advice, and the leopard had gone into other spots and the Ethiopian had changed his skin. The Ethiopian was black, and so his name was Sambo. The leopard was called Spots, and he has been called Spots ever since. They are out hunting in the spickly, speckly forest, and they are looking for Mr. 123, where's your breakfast? If you look a little, you will see Mr. 123 not far away. The Ethiopian has hidden behind a splotchy, blotchy tree because it matches his skin, and the leopard is lying beside a spickly, speckly bank of stones because it matches his spots. Mr. 123, where's your breakfast, is standing up eating leaves from a tall tree. This is really a puzzle picture like Find the Cat. The Elephant's Child. In the high and far off times, the elephant, O best beloved, had no trunk. He had only blackish, bulgy nose, as big as a boot, that he could wriggle about from side to side, but he couldn't pick up things with it. But there was one elephant, a new elephant, an elephant's child, who was full of satiable curiosity, and that means he asked ever so many questions. And he lived in Africa, and he filled all Africa with his satiable curiosities. He asked his tall aunt, the ostrich, why her tail feathers grew just so, and his tall aunt, the ostrich, spanked him with her hard, hard claw. He asked his tall uncle, the giraffe, what made his skin spotty, and his tall uncle, the giraffe, spanked him with his hard, hard hoof. And still he was full of satiable curiosity. He asked his broad aunt, the hippopotamus, why her eyes were red, and his broad aunt, the hippopotamus, spanked him with her broad, broad hoof. And he asked his hairy uncle, the baboon, why melons tasted just so, and his hairy uncle, the baboon, spanked him with his hairy, hairy paw. And still he was full of satiable curiosity. He asked questions about everything that he saw, or heard, or felt, or smelt, or touched, and all his uncles and his aunts spanked him, and still he was full of satiable curiosity. One fine morning, in the middle of the procession of the equinoxes, this satiable elephant's child asked a new fine question that he had never asked before. He asked, "What does the crocodile have for dinner?" Then everybody said, "Hush!" in a loud and dreadful tone, and they spanked him immediately and directly without stopping for a long time. By and by, when that was finished, he came upon Colo Colo. He came upon Colo Colo Bird sitting in the middle of a wait-a-bit thorn bush, and he said, "My father has spanked me, and my mother has spanked me. All my aunts and uncles have spanked me for my satiable curiosity, and still I want to know what the crocodile has for dinner." Then Colo Colo Bird said with a mournful cry, "Go to the banks of the great gray, green, greasy Limpopo River, all set about with fever trees, and find it." The very next morning, when there was nothing left of the equinoxes, because the procession had proceeded according to precedent, this satiable elephant's child took 100 pounds of bananas, the little short red kind, and 100 pounds of sugar cane, the long purple kind, and 17 melons, the greeny crackly kind, and said to all his dear families, "Goodbye. I'm going to the great gray, green, greasy Limpopo River, all set about with fever trees, to find out what the crocodile has for dinner." And they all spanked him once more for luck, though he asked them most politely to stop. Then he went away, a little warm, but not at all astonished, eating melons and throwing the rind about because he could not pick it up. He went from Grahamstown to Kimberley, and from Kimberley to Khama's country, and from Khama's country he went east by north, eating melons all the time, till at last he came to the banks of the great gray, green, greasy Limpopo River, all set about with fever trees, precisely as Colo Colo Bird had said. Now, you must know and understand, O best beloved, that till that very week and day and hour and minute, this satiable elephant's child had never seen a crocodile and did not know what one was like. It was all his satiable curiosity. The first thing that he found was a bicolored python rock snake curled round a rock. "Excuse me," said the elephant's child most politely, "but have you seen such a thing as a crocodile in these promiscuous parts?" "Have I seen a crocodile?" said the bicolored python rock snake in a voice of dreadful scorn. "What will you ask me next?" "Excuse me," said the elephant's child, "but could you kindly tell me what he has for dinner?" Then the bicolored python rock snake uncoiled himself very quickly from the rock and spanked the elephant's child with his scalesome, flailsome tail. "That is odd," said the elephant's child, "because my father and my mother and my uncle and my aunt, not to mention my other aunt, the hippopotamus, and my other uncle, the baboon, have all spanked me for my satiable curiosity. And I suppose this is the same thing." So he said goodbye very politely to the bicolored python rock snake, and helped to coil him up on the rock again, and went on, a little warm, but not at all astonished, eating melons and throwing the rind about, because he could not pick it up, till he trod on what he thought was a log of wood at the very edge of the great gray, green, greasy Limpopo River, all set about with fever trees. But it was really the crocodile, O best beloved, and the crocodile winked one eye like this. "Excuse me," said the elephant's child most politely, "but do you happen to have seen a crocodile in these promiscuous parts?" Then the crocodile winked the other eye and lifted half his tail out of the mud, and the elephant's child stepped back most politely, because he did not wish to be spanked again. "Come hither, little one," said the crocodile. "Why do you ask such things?" "Excuse me," said the elephant's child most politely. But my father has spanked me, and my mother has spanked me, not to mention my tall aunt, the ostrich, and my tall uncle, the giraffe, who can kick ever so hard, as well as my broad aunt, the hippopotamus, and my hairy uncle, the baboon, and including the bicolored python rock snake with the scalesome, flailsome tail just up the bank, who spanks harder than any of them. And so, if it's quite all the same to you, I don't want to be spanked anymore. Come hither, little one, said the crocodile, or I am the crocodile. And he wept crocodile tears to show it was quite true. Then the elephant's child grew all breathless and panted and kneeled down on the bank and said, You are the very person I have been looking for all these long days. Will you please tell me what you have for dinner? Come hither, little one, said the crocodile, in a whisper. Then the elephant's child put his head down close to the crocodile's musky, tusky mouth, and the crocodile caught him by his little nose, which up to that very week, day, hour, and minute had been no bigger than a boot, though much more useful. I think, said the crocodile, and he said it between his teeth like this, I think today I will begin with elephant's child. At this, O best beloved, the elephant's child was much annoyed, and he said, speaking through his nose like this, Let go, you are hurting me. Then the bicolored python rock snake scuffled down from the bank and said, My young friend, if you do not now immediately and instantly pull as hard as you ever can, it is my opinion that your acquaintance in the large pattern leather ulster, and by this he meant crocodile, will jerk you into yonder limpid stream before you can say Jack Robinson. This is the way bicolored python rock snakes always talk. Then the elephant's child sat back on his little haunches and pulled and pulled and pulled, and his nose began to stretch, and the crocodile floundered into the water, making it all creamy with great sweeps of his tail, and he pulled and pulled and pulled, and the elephant's child's nose kept on stretching, and the elephant's child spread all his little four legs and pulled and pulled and pulled, and his nose kept on stretching, and the crocodile threshed his tail like an oar, and he pulled and pulled and pulled, and at each pull the elephant's child's nose grew longer and longer, and it hurt him heejus. Then the elephant's child felt his legs slipping, and he said through his nose, which was now nearly 5 feet long, This is too much for me. Then the bicolored python rock snake came down from the bank and knotted himself in a double clove hitch round the elephant child's hind legs and said, Rash and inexperienced traveler, we will now seriously devote ourselves to a little high tension, because if we do not, it is my impression that yonder self-repelling man of war with the armor-plated upper deck, and by this, O best beloved, he meant the crocodile, will permanently vitiate your future career. That is the way all bicolored python rock snakes always talk. So he pulled, and the elephant's child pulled, and the crocodile pulled, but the elephant's child and the bicolored python rock snake pulled hardest, and at last the crocodile let go of the elephant's child's nose with a plop that you could hear all up and down the Limpopo. Then the elephant's child sat down most hard and sudden, but first he was careful to say, Thank you, to the bicolored python rock snake, and next he was kind to his poor pulled nose, and wrapped it all up in cool banana leaves, and hung it in the great gray-green greasy Limpopo to cool. What are you doing that for? Said the bicolored python rock snake. Excuse me, said the elephant's child, but my nose is badly out of shape, and I'm waiting for it to shrink. Then you will have to wait a long time, said the bi-colored python rock snake. Some people do not know what is good for them. The elephant's child sat there for 3 days waiting for his nose to shrink, but it never grew any shorter, and besides, it made him squint. But, oh best beloved, you will see and understand that the crocodile had pulled it out into a really, truly trunk, same as all elephants have today. At the end of the 3rd day, a fly came and stung him on the shoulder, and before he knew what he was doing, he lifted up his trunk and hit that fly dead with the end of it. Vantage number 1, said the bi-colored python rock snake. You couldn't have done that with a mere smear nose. Try and eat a little now. Before he thought what he was doing, the elephant's child put out his trunk and plucked a large bundle of grass, dusted it clean against his forelegs, and stuffed it into his own mouth. Vantage number 2, said the bi-colored python rock snake. You couldn't have done that with a mere smear nose. Don't you think the sun is very hot here? It is, said the elephant's child. And before he thought what he was doing, he slooped up a sloop of mud from the banks of the great gray-green greasy Limpopo and slapped it on his head, where it made a cool sloopy sloshy mud cap all trickly behind his ears. Vantage number 3, said the bi-colored python rock snake. You couldn't have done that with a mere smear nose. Now how do you feel about being spanked again? Excuse me, said the elephant's child, but I should not like it at all. How would you like to spank somebody? Said the bi-colored python rock snake. I should like it very much indeed, said the elephant's child. Well, said the bi-colored python rock snake, you will find that new nose of yours very useful to spank people with. Thank you, said the elephant's child. I'll remember that. And now I think I'll go home to all my dear friends and try. So the elephant's child went home across Africa, frisking and whisking his trunk. When he wanted fruit to eat, he pulled fruit down from a tree instead of waiting for it to fall as he used to do. When he wanted grass, he plucked up grass from the ground, instead of going on his knees as he used to do. When the flies bit him, he broke out the branch of a tree and used it as a fly whisk. And he made himself a new, cool, slushy, squishy mud cap whenever the sun was hot. When he felt lonely walking through Africa, he sang to himself down his trunk, and the noise was louder than several brass bands. He went especially out of his way to find a broad hippopotamus. She was no relation of his, and he spanked her very hard to make sure that the bi-colored python rock snake had spoken the truth about his new trunk. The rest of the time, he picked up the melon rinds that he had dropped on his way to the Limpopo, for he was a tidy pachyderm. One dark evening, he came back to all his dear families, and he coiled up his trunk and said, "How do you do?" They were very glad to see him, and immediately said, "Come here and be spanked for your satiable curiosity." "Pooh," said the elephant's child. "I don't think you peoples know anything about spanking, but I do. I'll show you." Then he uncurled his trunk and knocked 2 of his dear brothers head over heels. "Oh, bananas," said they. "Where did you learn that trick? And what have you done to your nose?" "I got a new one from the crocodile on the banks of the great gray green greasy Limpopo River," said the elephant's child. "I asked him what he had for dinner, and he gave me this to keep." "It looks very ugly," said his hairy uncle, the baboon. "It does," said the elephant's child, "but it's very useful." And he picked up his hairy uncle, the baboon, by one hairy leg and hove him into a hornet's nest. Then that bad elephant's child spanked all his dear families for a long time, till they were very warm and greatly astonished. He pulled out his tall ostrich aunt's tail's feathers, and he caught his tall uncle the giraffe by the hind leg and dragged him through a thorn bush, and he shouted at his broad aunt the hippopotamus and blew bubbles into her ear when she was sleeping in the water after meals. But he never let anyone touch Colo Colo Bird. At last things grew so exciting that his dear families went off one by one in a hurry to the banks of the great gray, green, greasy Limpopo River, all set about with fever trees to borrow new noses from the crocodile. When they came back, nobody spanked anybody anymore. And ever since that day, O best beloved, all the elephants you will ever see, besides all those that you won't, have trunks precisely like the trunk of the satiable elephant's child. I keep 6 honest serving men. They taught me all I know. Their names are What and Where and When, and How and Where and Who. I send them over land and sea. I send them east and west. But after they have worked for me, I give them all the rest. I let them rest from 9 till 5, for I am busy then, as well as breakfast, lunch, and tea, for they are hungry men. But different folk have different views. I know a person small. She keeps 10 million serving men who get no rest at all. She sends them abroad on her own affairs from the second she opens her eyes. 1 million hows, 2 million wares, and 7 million whys. That is the elephant's child having his nose pulled by the crocodile. He is much surprised and astonished and hurt, and he is talking through his nose and saying, "Let go, you're hurting me." He is pulling very hard, and so is the crocodile. But the bicolored python rock snake is hurrying through the water to help the elephant's child. All that black stuff is the banks of the great gray, green, greasy Limpopo River, but I'm not allowed to paint these pictures. And the botley tree and the twisty roots and the 8 leaves is one of the fever trees that grow there. Underneath the truly picture are shadows of African animals walking into an African ark. There are 2 lions, 2 ostriches, 2 oxen, 2 camels, 2 sheep, and 2 other things that look like rats, but I think they are rock rabbits. They don't mean anything. I put them in because I thought they looked pretty. They would look very fine if I were allowed to paint them. This is just a picture of the elephant's child going to pull bananas off a banana tree after he had got his fine new long trunk. I don't think it is a very nice picture, but I couldn't make it any better because elephants and bananas are hard to draw. The streaky things behind the elephant's child mean squoggy, marshy country somewhere in Africa. The elephant's child made most of his mud cakes out of mud that he found there. I think it would look better if you painted the banana tree green and the elephant's child red. The Sing-Song of Old Man Kangaroo. Not always was the kangaroo as now we do behold him, but a different animal with 4 short legs. He was gray and he was woolly, and his pride was inordinate. He danced on an outcrop in the middle of Australia, and he went to the little god Naka. He went to Naka at 6 before breakfast, saying, "Make me different from all the other animals by 5 this afternoon." Up jumped Naka from his seat on the sand flat and shouted, "Go away!" He was gray and he was woolly, and his pride was inordinate. He danced on a rock ledge in the middle of Australia, and he went to the middle god Nquing. He went to Nquing at 8 after breakfast, saying, "Make me different from all the other animals. Make me also wonderfully popular by 5 this afternoon." Up jumped Nquing from his burrow in the spinifex and shouted, "Go away!" He was gray and he was woolly, and his pride was inordinate. He danced on a sandbank in the middle of Australia, and he went to the big god Nkong. He went to Nkong at 10 before dinner time, saying, "Make me different from all other animals. Make me popular and wonderfully run after by 5 this afternoon." Up jumped Nkong from his bath in the salt pan and shouted, "Yes, I will." Nkong called Dingo, Yellow Dog Dingo, always hungry, dusty in the sunshine, and showed him Kangaroo. Nkong said, "Dingo, wake up, Dingo. Do you see that gentleman dancing on Ash Pit? He wants to be popular and very truly run after. Dingo, make him so." Up jumped Dingo, Yellow Dog Dingo, and said, "What, that cat rabbit?" Off ran Dingo, Yellow Dog Dingo, always hungry, grinning like a coal scuttle, ran after Kangaroo. Off went the proud Kangaroo on his 4 little legs like a bunny. This, O beloved of mine, ends the first part of the tale. He ran through the desert, he ran through the mountains, he ran through the salt pans, he ran through the reed beds, he ran through the blue gums, he ran through the spinifex, he ran till his front legs ached. He had to. Still ran Dingo, Yellow Dog Dingo, always hungry, grinning like a rat trap, never getting nearer, never getting further, ran after Kangaroo. He had to. Still ran Kangaroo, Old Man Kangaroo. He ran through the tea trees. He ran through the mulga. He ran through the long grass. He ran through the short grass. He ran through the tropics of Capricorn and Cancer. He ran till his hind legs ached. He had to. Still ran Dingo, Yellow Dog Dingo, hungrier and hungrier, grinning like a horse collar, never getting nearer, never getting farther, and they came to the Wogong River. Now, there wasn't any bridge, and there wasn't any ferry boat, and the Kangaroo didn't know how to get over. So he stood on his legs and hopped. He had to. He hopped through the flinders, he hopped through the cinders, he hopped through the deserts in the middle of Australia. He hopped like a kangaroo. First, he hopped 1 yard, then he hopped 3 yards, then he hopped 5 yards, his legs growing stronger, his legs growing longer. He hadn't any time for rest or refreshment, and he wanted them very much. Still ran Dingo, Yellow Dog Dingo, very much bewildered, very much hungry, and wondering what in the world or out of it made Old Man Kangaroo hop. For he hopped like a cricket, like a pea in a saucepan, or a new rubber ball on a nursery floor. He had to. He tucked up his front legs, he hopped on his hind legs, he stuck out his tail for a balance weight behind him, and he hopped through the Darling Downs. He had to. Still ran Dingo, tired dog Dingo, hungrier and hungrier, very much bewildered, and wondering when in the world or out of it would Old Man Kangaroo stop. Then came Nkong from his bath and the salt pans and said, "It's 5 o'clock." Down sat Dingo, poor dog Dingo, always hungry, dusky in the sunshine, hung out his tongue and howled. Down sat Kangaroo, Old Man Kangaroo, stuck out his tail like a milking stool behind him and said, "Thank goodness that's finished." Then said Nkong, who is always a gentleman, "Why aren't you grateful to Yellow Dog Dingo? Why don't you thank him for all he has done for you?" Then said Kangaroo, tired old Kangaroo, "He's chased me out of the homes of my childhood. He's chased me out of my regular meal times. He's altered my shape so I'll never get it back. And he's played old scratch with my legs." Then said Nkong, "Perhaps I'm mistaken, but didn't you ask me to make you different from all other animals, as well as to make you very truly sought after? And now it is 5 o'clock. Yes, said Kangaroo. I wish that I hadn't. I thought you would do it by charms and incantations, but this is a practical joke. Joke? Said Nakong from his bath in the blue gums. Say that again, and I'll whistle up Dingo and run your hind legs off. No, said the Kangaroo. I must apologize. Legs are legs, and you needn't alter 'em so far as I'm concerned. I only meant to explain to your lordliness that I've had nothing to eat since morning, and I'm very empty indeed. Yes, said Dingo, Yellow Dog Dingo. I'm just in the same situation. I've made him different from all other animals. But what may I have for my tea? Then said Nakong from his bath in the salt pan, come and ask me about it tomorrow, because I'm going to wash. So they were left in the middle of Australia, Old Man Kangaroo and Yellow Dog Dingo, and each said, that's your fault. This is the mouth-filling song of the race that was run by a boomer, run in a single burst only event of its kind, started by Big God Nakong from Warragaraboragoruma, Old Man Kangaroo first, Yellow Dog behind. Kangaroo bounded away, his back legs working like pistons, bounded from morning till dark, 25 feet to a bound. Yellow Dog Dingo lay, like a yellow cloud in the distance, much too busy to bark. My, but they covered the ground. Nobody knows where they went, or followed the track that they flew in, for that continent hadn't been given a name. They ran 30 degrees, from Torres Straits to the Lewin. Look at the atlas, please. And they ran back as they came. Supposing you could trot from Adelaide to the Pacific for an afternoon's run, half what these gentlemen did, you would feel rather hot, but your legs would develop terrific. Yes, my importunate son, you'd be a marvelous kid. That is a picture of Old Man Kangaroo when he was the different animal with 4 short legs. I have drawn him gray and woolly, and you can see that he is very proud because he has a wreath of flowers in his hair. He is dancing on an outcrop, that means a ledge of a rock, in the middle of Australia at 6 o'clock before breakfast. You can see that it is 6 o'clock because the sun is just getting up. The thing with the ears and the open mouth is Little God Nakah. Nakah is very much surprised because he has never seen a kangaroo dance like that before. Little God Nakah is just saying, go away. But the kangaroo is so busy dancing that he has not heard him yet. The kangaroo hasn't any real name except Boomer. He lost it because he was so proud. That is the picture of Old Man Kangaroo at 5 in the afternoon, when he had got his beautiful hind legs just as Big God Nakong had promised. You can see that it is 5 o'clock because Big God Nakong's pet tame clock says so. That is Nakong in his bath sticking his feet out. Old Man Kangaroo is being rude to Yellow Dog Dingo. Yellow Dog Dingo has been trying to catch kangaroo all across Australia. You can see the marks of kangaroo's big new feet running ever so far back over the bare hills. Yellow Dog Dingo is drawn black because I'm not allowed to paint these pictures with real colors out of the paint box. And besides, Yellow Dog Dingo got dreadfully black and dusty after running through the flinders and the cinders. I don't know the names of the flowers growing round Nakong's bath. The 2 little squatty things out in the desert are the other 2 gods that Old Man Kangaroo spoke to early in the morning. that thing with the letters on it, is Old Man Kangaroo's pouch. He had to have a pouch just as he had to have legs.